Nínak machrí, nínak mrún smagrai. Vech gumbat zatok elfochid guling marie.
I gave a talk in Bunadas to the Polyglot Gathering back at the end of April, and I'm going to use some of the material from there, and I'm also going to use a few sort of slides from a talk I gave in Gaelic, but I'm sure that won't faze you linguists at all. Now, I've got quite a lot to get through, so let's, share screen, and here we are, share. Now, can you all see that?
Looks good.
Yep.
Right, okay. This, instead of a PowerPoint slideshow, I just scroll through it, but I'm actually going to spend most of my time actually live demonstration, so anything could happen. Bunadas is not actually funded by anybody. This is all totally a hobby. Never had any funding, really. It's a network database of cognate words, and that's kind of how it works. That's the address for it. You'll see a 3 appearing, and doesn't matter whether it's got www or www3. Chenga, that's my various language resources are at Chenga, Bunadas. And that's my address. And I won't have time to get through everything just now, but if anybody wants to email me or contact me on Facebook, then I'll be very happy to either one-to-one or more people to say more. I am in the island of Skye there. I'm still connected to Solmorostic, although I've got a couple of pensions now. I was brought up in Ayr there through English. My mother was from the west of Ireland, though. I learned Irish Gaelic in Glasgow, of all places, and then Scottish Gaelic in Edinburgh, and so on. So, right, let's go to the Bunadas. There we have it, www.3smouhic. Before I start properly, I've got my notes over on the left, by the way, so that's why I keep looking over to the left. A slight diversion. Bunadas is the words are connected to dictionaries via multidict. So just to make sure you know what multidict is in advance, if I click SMO, I'll go to SMO, sort of college internal web page. But if I click Chenga here, I go to the various multilingual resources that I've created, including Bunadas at the top. This is a sort of network database of Scottish Irish Gaelic idioms. Smotters, a translation system which is used by Bunadas. Multidict links to dictionaries. WordLink builds on that. Closed-door, which Gordon Wells talked about a couple of weeks ago, builds on WordLink. Very quick look at Multidict. It knows about dictionaries in lots and lots of languages, so it can go from one language to another. Breton word. Think of a Breton word quickly. Can't think of a Breton word.
Braise.
B-R, how do you spell it?
E-I-Z-H.
Oh, right. Okay. Oh, actually, the last dictionary I used is Victor Henry Etymological Dictionary from 1900. Page, image, and so there we are. And he's got various views on it. The main sort of, there aren't really very good Breton dictionaries online, but I think this one's probably the best. Faverolles, the old version of Faverolles. I don't understand all the abbreviations. Let's go to Gaelic and look up an easy Gaelic word, tariff, and Gaelic. Gaelic here. So Gaelic English Dictionary, the main dictionary is probably in Fachler Big. It's got McBain as a page image. It's got all dictionaries, links to individual pages of the Web Archive dictionaries. You can change quickly from Scottish Gaelic to Irish Gaelic, either by the drop down or these little icons. So now we're doing Gaelic to English. I don't know what the Old Irish. Well, let's try Old Irish. Right, here's the Old Irish button. We don't want Indul Bailry, we want Edil. Well, it's like that wasn't a good word. Tech. Okay, so somewhere down there is tech. So it's a quick way of looking up words in Edil. I think the Welsh word is tarw, T-A-R-W, and Cumrish. I'm just showing you a few idiosyncrasies of this. Cymraeg. I use endonyms. Right, the Gairiadur, the main Welsh dictionary, which is good for etymology if you can understand the Welsh, the Gairiadur Prifysgol Cymru refuses to put its data in a frame, so unfortunately you have to submit, and then you get there. So tarw, and if you can understand it, it's got etymological information here. It's got links to Old Norse dictionaries as well. Now, to show you another slight complication, let's go to French, maison, and français. Français. Okay, it's got Français Breton. No, we don't want that. We want Français English. So there's the last French English dictionary I happen to use. You can swap languages there. You can go to French by either the drop down or quickly. Right. Okay, I'm going to this because there's a good French etymological dictionary online, CNRTL, but that doesn't, it's making a hash of it. That's because CNRTL still doesn't work properly with HTTPS. If you look up here, it's using HTTPS, which everybody should be using now. But you can switch with multidict, and there we are. It's properly formatted. It's finding the style sheets, and so that's a little complication there. Now, let's just close that. And so that was a little excursion to tell you about multidict in advance. Right, cognates are very useful for learning languages. Don't need to tell you linguists about that, but you have to be careful because there are false cognates. You can go badly wrong if you're just naive. German haben, Latin habeo are not related at all, even though they both mean the same thing, to have. French Feuer, German Feuer, French feu, you would swear are related. Both mean fire, but they're not related at all. They're totally unrelated. English day, Latin dies, which is the D in mardi, mercredi, are not related. Greek theos is not related to Latin deus, but Latin deus is related to Greek Zeus or whatever it is. Here's a good pub quiz question. Which of these three words, lake, loch, and lac, is the odd one out? It's not related to the others. Well, it's lake. English lake is Gaelic loch, French lac are related to one another, but English lake is not, except that the A apparently is influenced by the A in lac. Lai is the Gaelic for a hymn, or they talk about the Fenian lays, the old celebration of the Fenians, and you would swear that Lai and lay are related to one another, but they're not at all. Now here's a sneak preview ahead. If I click on this, haben, German haben, this is some of the capabilities of Bunadas. It can construct a family tree in the fly. It can also label your words, highlight them by an option in the URL. So haben is from Indo-European cap. If you hover over it, it means to seize, grab, take up, and so on. And it's related to haven, which is a sort of a creek for boats. And the Gaelic word cuan was originally more harbour than the Atlantic Ocean. I'll go back. And whereas Latin habeo, or habeo, if you, is from a totally different Indo-European root, which is related to gavel, Gaelic for fork and whatnot. So we have to be careful. Right. And the really etymology requires painstaking work, years of painstaking work, and people that laboriously go through the sound laws, not just Grimm's laws, but hundreds and hundreds of them, and conditioned by various phonetic environments. And then you have to work out the chronology of the various sound laws and whatnot. And I don't know about that at all. I'm not an etymological expert. I'm just gathering together material collected by the experts. Right. I'm going to go to Bunadas. So how can Bunadas help you, and what can it do? Say you're an English speaker, you're learning German, you've come across the German word Hund, which I will deliberately spell wrongly without a capital H. And it's found two words from Anglo-Saxon Old English. And I can zoom in temporarily. One of them means 100, so it's related to the English word 100. The other one means a dog, which is related to. And this is a display feature of Bunadas. It's got disambiguators. Bunadas works by numbers. Every word is a number, but for humans, it's got a disambiguator, which is very important. This is something that I'll keep talking about Wiktionary, because most of my data is copied across from Wiktionary. And Wiktionary, the etymological information is great, but the way it's structured is not, far from it. And Wiktionary doesn't have a proper identifiers, doesn't properly distinguish homonyms. Right, let's go to you can find inexact matches, so it's found Hund with a capital H. And the way Bunadas works is the words are in clusters, and this word is in Hund is in two clusters. One is a Germanic cluster, going back to Proto-Germanic Hundas. It's got Anglo-Saxon Hund, dog, modern German Hund, Old Norse, which seems to have had a Hund as a prefix. Here's a cluster within languages. This is a great thing about Bunadas, is it doesn't just go between languages, but it can analyze words within languages. So that dachshund, as we say in English, or dachshund, means a badger dog, I suppose, for hunting badgers. That's another cluster. So Bunadas is working by clusters. The other way of working would be direct word-to-word links. And from a theoretical point of view, the two are exactly equivalent, theoretically. And Kevin Scannell teaches computer theory. I'm not saying one is better than the other. For editing and organizing data, the clusters are certainly handier and easier to keep human track of. Complicates the programs, the constructing the trees a little bit. But there we are. So clusters. What's next? Right. I am logged in at the moment, so things are looking rather cluttered. So I'm seeing things like pens for editing and whatnot, things for creating new groups that you won't see. If I log out, wait a second or two. Right, this is what you'll see. You can be playing about while you're listening, if you can multitask. But if anybody wants to try out the editing facilities, go back to the home page and down here choose Bun Test instead of Bunadas, and then you're now working with a copy of the database. And look up Hund, and I can change it to Hund Test. So there is change. Find it. Wait. Hunt, right, there we are, Hunt. And now I use the pen to change the spelling to Hunt test. Right, edit successful. So now we've got Hunt test. Right, you can play around to your heart's content, deleting words, creating groups, and you can't do any damage or any good, because every so often I copy the main Bunadas database across to Bun test. So it lets people explore and see what the possibilities are. The only way to get out of this is to go back to the main page and down to the bottom here and change your database back to Bunadas. And then if I look up Hunt, we're back where we were without the test. Right, because you are all linguists, I'm going to do something different from what I did in the polyglot gathering talk, and I'm going to leave the editing facilities and all the clutter in place so that you can see what the possibilities are. If you're thinking of using Bunadas in projects or anything like that. Right. If you hover over words, it gives you the meaning. So Dachshund is a dachshund, badger hounds, basset hound, old noun masculine dog for the Hundas, Proto-Germanic Hundas. Login clusters. Right. We're working through English here, but I've got ideas, dreams of that Bunadas could be an international database and useful to linguists in South America and whatnot. You can change the interface to Deutsch. Now it says Sprache Deutsch, Wort, Hund, Kommentars, the meaning. Nachbarn instead of neighbours. So we've got an interface in about a dozen languages, Breton, whatnot. 3 big languages I'm missing I would like to have are Welsh, Spanish and Russian, probably, because there's lots of Indo-European linguistics in Russia, and it's a gateway to lots of other languages. This language interface uses Smotter, a homegrown system. Because I'm logged in and have permission, I can go here and I could change some of these message strings. Let's go back and not do that. Oh, I've opened a new tab. Right. Let's change back to English, which we can all understand. So that's the interface. The clusters, this is a metric here. So this is the distance away from the center of the cluster. And I used to just make all the words one, and then I found it's more useful to define one word as the center of the cluster. If they're all from Proto-Germanic, then that's the center, or the base words that Dachshund comes from Hund, and if you click Dachshund, it also comes from Dachs, which means a badger. This symbol here means that Hund is a component of Dachshund. More to say about that later. You can change these faint editing tools here. You can change that 1 to a 2, increase the distance, put it back down again. You can increase it a tiny bit, tweak it, which is handy sometimes if you want to force the trees to do things. This symbol here, saying it's a component, you can change it to various other symbols, which I'll talk about later. That's a very minor component, postfix, suffix. So editing facilities. One editing facility, in addition to that I don't have a proper button for yet. If there's uncertainty about you can edit it, and that gives it a probability 0.6 that Dachshund is from Hund. That's wrong, it's totally certain, so I'll put it back up to 1. Naively, when I'm following the trees, I multiply the probabilities, and if it's 0.5 or less, it's not shown. So that's handy there's a lot of uncertainty sometimes in etymology. Right, next thing on the list. Okay, Hund. Again, And I could go to the Proto-Germanic Hundas and find it's from Proto-Indo-European quo, and it's related to Proto-Celtic ku and Latin canis and so on. And you could click around there and explore, but much better is to let the computer do the exploring. You just click neighborhood and whoosh, it has explored and found lots of cognate words. Now, I'll reduce the size a bit. This it's a bit cluttered and confusing because it's going backwards and forwards and sideways and everything at the same time. It would be better instead of just a tree starting on Hund if we went to the Proto-Indo-European Quo or whatever it is and did neighborhood again. And here we have a proper rooted tree that's easier to understand. And we see the color scheme. The colors, when you're using it, the colors are very important. And if the way I work is I go from more wishy-washy colors to more defined colors as you move to the right to the modern languages. Proto-Indo-European is easily identified because it's kind of greyed out in a way. This is Proto-Celtic, that's Gaulish. SGA is Shen Goidelic, Old Irish. Modern Irish, Scottish Gaelic, GVs, Manx, Brythonic, Welsh, Old Cornish, KWs, Cornish, and so on. It's worth remembering some of the language codes. I call it a neighbourhood because it's stepping, each step it's going further away from quo. You can limit things, you can move this over to the left and then you won't get so far. Right. Okay, but usually I don't move this very much. So it's exploring on the network to construct a minimal spanning tree, as I'll say later. Right. Okay. So there's our Hund, but Hund was linked to Dachshund. So where has Dachshund gone? It's not shown because we need to show super elements if we want to see it. Right. So now if we scroll down, things have exploded a bit in the Celtic. We've got Dachshund, which is really gave the English word dachshund, as we say in English usually. Other interesting things, Welsh key has corgi as a short dog, which gives the Queen's corgis. Lots more. So you can switch on and off super elements. And we come to sub elements. I'm just making sure I'm covering everything by looking over at my notes on the left. Right. I'll switch off the super elements. Okay. Now this, we've got the Gaelic word cualacht, modern Irish cualacht. Well, that looks like it's a sort of super element to cu, but in fact, I'll go to the Old Irish. And right, this this is something I added a long time ago. The way I would do it now is put the origin there, that symbol there. Right, that's the way I do things these days. So cualacht is not a combination of words, but from cu, but rather it's just a minor increase with lots of suffixes. And the reason for that is, let's go back to the neighbourhood and go to the Proto-Indo-European and click neighbourhood again to root it properly. The reason for that is that I've got relaxed equivalents here, and relaxed equivalents will follow things that are not exactly the, oops. If I go to strict equivalents, cualacht has disappeared, but in fact, you'd leave things in relaxed equivalents all the time. And if things are in relaxed equivalence, then it'll pick up words that are related like that. And this is a sort of fundamental concept to make the whole thing work. And this is something that Wiktionary, Wikidata doesn't have yet, as far as I can see. To make the automatic generation of interesting family trees for words work, you need to have this concept of almost equivalence and whatnot. Okay, let's switch on the super elements again. And now we're seeing corgi and we're seeing dachshund. Now up here, there's also sub-elements. We're going down the way. Scroll down to dachshund. Why aren't we seeing dachs? Well, because dachs isn't related to co or to hund, and the system is clever enough to know that you. So that's what I'm coming to. Yeah, you can go. Let's see, you can go down and back up. You can't go up and back down, something like that. I'll come to that later. Right, I'll switch these off again. And here's another feature of this. This is rather cluttered. Say you're not interested in it, especially the Celtic languages. If you're not interested in Celtic languages at all, you can click Celt and it's gone. Click it again and it's back. Don't click on the coup, otherwise you'll go to the page for coup. You click on the language tag and some JavaScript makes that disappear. Dead simple, and it's very important, effective. And I can't see it because it's hidden by the zoom tools. But if you click there, the things that are hidden are remembered in the URL. So you can copy the URL if you want to use family trees, etymological trees from Bunadas in classes, or to give to links to people. You can collapse some of the branches, and it's contained in the URL. You can also, in the URL, indicate words that you want to have highlighted. Let's uncompress things again. Oh, I've compressed too much. You can also click in the star. Oh, right. So how many words do we have? If we go home, over on the right here, language, this gives all the languages that Bunadas covers at the moment. So there's no Indo-Iranian or anything like that, no Albanian, or so it's only about 40, even including Middle Cornish and whatnot. It's only about 40 Indo-European languages. Something here, I've tried to not make things too English centered. So instead of calling German, I call it Deutsch. Same for French, Français. And I carry this a bit further, and instead of Old Irish or Irlandais Ancien, I say Sen Goidelk. And for Old English, it's Eld Englisk. When I first started this, I used to call it Engelsk, and that was too confusing. It's too like English, and Goidelk is too much like. So I've got these, I call them retro endonyms, and with a bit of help, I've got some for Welsh and whatnot, but I haven't managed to get back to find any Proto-Germanic speakers or Proto-Celtic speakers to go that far back. Now we can click on word count here, and that gives the numbers. Back in the languages, I've tried to make the names give some sort, and the greyness, the amount it's greyed out, is an indication that I don't have very much. So I've got loads of Old Irish, Modern Irish, because I've got De Bhaldrathe as a penance for messing up the Irish language with his Caoimhín Offigal spelling reform, was forced to go through all 42,000 words in the Old Irish Dictionary and compile a thing here, which you'll not see because I'm screen sharing, Inyex Nua Gaeilge. So a student of ours and also Kevin Scannell put all that online and combined the two to do error correction. And we've got 16,000 Old Irish words and the same number in Modern Irish. We've got loads of Manx words because, again, big donation from Kevin Scannell, thank you very much, of Manx words. A problem here is that I haven't sorted out properly. The Innex Nua Gaeilge uses the third singular as the dictionary form for Modern Irish, whereas Kevin Scannell and Wikipedia and everything uses the imperative, singular imperative, and that's what I'd like to change to. So my Kevin's wonderful Manx data, embarrassingly rich, actually, it's a bit of a mix match because it's just so rich, is not properly integrated. There's a switch for pulling it in. My work plan is to change the Modern Irish to the third singular, from the third singular to the imperative, and then match in all Kevin's wonderful Manx data. I've got a fair bit of Old Cornish because I've got a donation of 1,000 words from Ken George. Old Norse, English, quite a bit of Old English, lots of Latin. For French, I've got quite a lot because I know French, did French in school, and quite a lot of Old French because that gave Modern French and gave lots of English words. Very little in the other Romance languages. I've got about 400, no, about 3 Slavic languages, Lithuanian, Greek in a bronze colour here. I don't know. So that's the coverage at the moment. Right. What's next? So no Indo-Iranian. I don't distinguish Middle Irish and Old Irish as I should because DIL doesn't either. Wiktionary is starting to, so that's a weakness at the moment. Right, the search facilities. Well, you saw the hunt. If I click here, find a word, we get slightly more refined search facilities. So if we wanted to look for bitch rather than a dog, then various words meaning bitch, like Russian suka, which goes back to ko. You can, if you want to get all the Russian words, it would be a bad idea to get all the English words because there are too many of them. But Ruski and find, and there's a list of all the Russian words, including, where's vodka? Oh, never mind vodka just now. This is actually a useful facility, even outside etymology. If I go to Sen Goidelk, Old Irish, you can put echt in and you get all the Old Irish words that end in echt. So you can, it's good for finding words and if you get good language coverage. So that's the search facilities. I've got ideas of more sophistication. This is for the future. If you could take the words in the gloss and go through, and if the gloss, the meaning is in English, you could go through an English thesaurus and go to other words in related languages. So it's a sort of I've got ideas of sort of semantic etymological combinations there. I'm looking at my list here. Right, some theory. So I'll leave that just now. And right, why do I have this network structure? Way back 20 years ago, I gave a paper on this Celtic cognates database, or SCC, Stór Aclan Cogaibhil Celtic, as I called it. This developed, we had a student from Wales at the college, a very good student, who did a website was showing relations between Welsh words and Gaelic words, and saw how pleased I was with that, and produced a spreadsheet with a list of about 1,000 Welsh and Gaelic words that were all related. And I was so happy with that. I put it into a database, access database. And so she had a sister in Cornwall. She went through a Cornish dictionary, in fact, 2 Cornish dictionaries, and got another 1,000 Cornish words. And then she went to Breton and got hundreds of Breton cognates to the 3 of them. And meanwhile, the late, great Brian Stoll sent me a list of 1,000 Manx words, and I got the Gaelic cognates for them. And I had visions of a nice database, but it just didn't work. There were too many columns, too sparse. As I wrote at the time, we needed to combine things here, these separate rows together, and it never happened. And it was impossible anyway. A rectangular structure is not good enough for showing etymological relationships. You can have one Gaelic word related to 3 English words, or vice versa, and whatnot. So that didn't work. We need a network database. And so Kevin Scannell teaches computing theory and computing structures. And here's a tree, like your files in the computer. I've got your root folder, root directory, and subfolders and subfolders down to the individual files. If you've got directionality, you've got a rooted tree. So this unrooted tree, you could pick up the number 1 and let it dangle, and that would be a tree. But over here, you've got a defined root. The thing about trees that differ from networks is trees have got no cycles. So you can't go from 4 to 10 to 6 and back. But networks do have cycles. And Bunadas, via the clusters, is a network database. So this is sort of friends. Jane is friends with Alberta, is friends with Arik, is friends with Marco, is friends with Johan, is friends with Luda, is friends with, back to Jane. You can get trees out by taking the minimal spanning tree, starting with Jane. Sometimes you get a choice of roots. And that's what Bunadas does to construct the trees in the fly. So I did that, and things were going wrong with connecting Dachs to Hunt wrongly via Dachshund. So I had to develop this concept of components. And here's a slightly false artificial illustration in Gaelic. Príomhrad is a main road. Príomh is a component of that. It's also a component of Príomhvinistir. So if you get going down and going up, sub-elements, super-elements, switched on, you can go from Príomhrad to Príomhvinistir, which sure enough are related through the component Príomh. You can go up further to Lles Príomhvinistir, Deputy Prime Minister, but if you go up, you can't go down to Lles, because that would be making a false connection between Lles and Príomh and whatnot. So these symbols are very important. So I introduced them and found that things didn't work very well because I was being too restrictive. So I had to introduce these almost equivalence symbols. And here we have Príomhrad is slightly artificially related to the Príomhráidin, plural. Príomh is a component. It's also a component of Príomhvinistirlach, Prime Ministership, Príomhvinistir. And you can get from there to there, despite the ups and downs, but if you're in relaxed equivalence. And looking at it in a bit more detail, you have to be a bit disciplined about how you use these. So this is an almost equivalent word, which has got some suffix, a minor component. You can have lots of these minor components, suffixes, prefixes, infixes even. And you can have major components, any number of them. But if you've got one of these, you can't have any of these. You have to be careful. Sometimes you've got a choice of whether you split a word like this or whether you split it like this, and you have to decide and be consistent about it. So that's how the structure works. It's editing facilities. I've got editing switched on. Let's go to Hunt. So with the pen, you can give it a disambiguator if you need be. Grammar, gloss. If I give it a gloss in French, I put a FR colon in front of it. IPA, it's a bit laborious copying that. And the IPA is really an excuse to show the Russian and Cyrillic and Greek without having to give an English transliteration. So that's useful. Oh, by the way, if you click on this map here, you go back home, and if you click on the map again, you get the kind of concept of how Bunadas works. So you've got a cluster here, Goidelic cluster, Irish, Welsh cluster, Brythonic cluster, and fusing that, you can get from one to the other. Let's go back. And here's a nice thing when you're busy editing, is if I wanted, I could drag this Germanic word, grab the language tag and drag it up there. Whee! I'll delete it. If I hold down the Control key and drag, it's moved. So it's actually gone from here. I'll hold down Control again and drag it back again. Sometimes it didn't quite catch it. Come on, work. Right, it's worked. But it's messed up the numbers, the metrics here. Let's put it back to 0. I can drop. Yeah, if anybody's keen to help with this and gets trained up so they don't accidentally mess it up, I'd be happy to have other people. I can't possibly do all this myself in the remaining lifetime. So I'm thinking about how we do things in the future. So that's most of my talk. A few quick things to finish. I'm not quite sure what to do about place names and personal names. If they're major, I include them, but you could possibly include hundreds of place names. In the trees, really, as well as we could have thousands and thousands of words here, and we need facilities for people, individual users, to be able to filter them out and say, I'm not interested at all in Greek words or Slavic words or whatever. And maybe the same thing with place names and personal names. If we started including lots of them, you might have them switched off by the default. Things to do in the future, well, apart from sorting out the modern Irish headwords and fully incorporating Kevin's wonderful Manx collection, it would be very nice to have a project going through all 42,000 words in Dill, because Dill very often contains basic etymological information, and that would in turn provide etymological information for the modern Irish, modern Scottish Gaelic words. The last thing I want to do is very quickly look at other people who've done similar things, right? If I can find these, the Zoom tools are in the road a bit in my screen. Right, here's a thing called Rabbitique. and I've looked up the Irish Gaelic word fault, and it's all these three facilities I'm going to look at. They extract data, scrape it automatically from Wiktionary. I've got 70,000 Celtic language words, 30,000 non-Celtic language. They've all been laboriously entered by me by hand. Just as well I'm retired and have lots of time, semi-retired. Here's Rabbitique, which has extracted things, scraped them automatically from Wiktionary, which is only ever partially successful because Wiktionary isn't well enough organized yet. And it's done various things just because it can. Yeah, it's found various cognates and whatnot. That's Rabbitique. What's this? Can I move this?
It seems like you've muted yourself.
Right, thanks. Thank you. I was just moving the Zoom toolbar. Etymologique. After my polyglot talk, somebody contacted me, a Lithuanian living in Cambridge, and he and some friends, colleagues have produced this thing that again automatically extracts information from Wiktionary, the English Wiktionary. There are other Wiktionaries. There's the French, and the Russian one's very good for etymology if you can understand it. So that's interesting. I don't think any of them, well, I'm sure none of them compete with what Bunadas does. In coverage, they've got much greater coverage, but they don't go, this isn't going sideways. And if it's tried to go sideways, it would run into all the inconsistencies in Wiktionary. And the last one I want to show you is Gerard de Mello. Gerard de Mello, who used to be in the States, is now head of some big linguistics, big linguistic data unit in Potsdam. And he has a, what's it called? Etymological WordNet, and promising, hopefully, facilities coming in the future, which never really appeared. And maybe it's because of the problems. You can use this to look up words. What's it? Lexvo.com, and you get a huge amount of information. It's marvelously good, really big computing, far bigger than the scale I do things on. But again, it doesn't have the less than all these various symbols. And so finally, very last thing, all of these systems and Bunadas and all the various Wiktionaries should really be getting their data from Wikidata. Wikidata is the database equivalent of Wikipedia, and it has a now incorporates lexicographic data, which begins with L. Usually Wikidata things begin with Q, but the lexemes begin with L, and if really that should be the basis of everything. And I've been exploring it a bit. And is it up to standard at the moment? No, it isn't at all. But it doesn't, it's got a concept of a lexeme and then senses, but the senses can be from different etymologies. So the one lexeme can have different etymologies, like bay can be a bay horse, or it can be a bay in a coastline. And there's a sick bay is just linked to bay without saying whether it means a bay in a coast or a horse. I think I've sort of said enough, but that's the future somehow or another. But I think it'll be a few years yet before Wikidata lexemes are up to it. So if I can stop sharing, and then, okay, sorry if I went over what I intended a bit.
Let's thank our speaker for a fascinating talk. I'm going to take moderator's privilege here. And first of all, start by thanking you for doing all this work. It is a remarkable tool, and it's amazing that you did all of this by hand. I am totally blown over by the amount of work that's involved and the deep understanding and connections that it involved. So you've done a lot for historical linguistics just by building that together. So I really appreciate that, and thank you for that. I do have a question, but I think what I'll do is I see there's another question in the chat from Johannes, and I'll let him ask that.
Yeah, thank you very much, Kevin. Very good work. And I saw a while ago that Pokorny's data is online. I don't know for the legal stuff, but did you include it already? Or did you plan to do it, or have somebody do it?
No. My opinion is, maybe I'm wrong, I'm not an etymologist, but I think Pokorny's work is still great, but and by and large it's been surpassed by the Wiktionary data now, which has got lots of much more modern work in it. It would be nice if I could link, I think it would be good to link the Proto-Indo-European roots given by Wiktionary to Pokorny's data. And that, I would like to do that somehow. But sometimes Pokorny's roots are really now considered to be two separate Indo-European words and all that kind of thing these days, as far as I understand it. But it would be nice to link to it in some way, but I think it's been surpassed by English Wiktionary data.
But the problem with Wiktionary is there's so many non-specialists and there's so many bad stuff in there. I check it sometimes. The error rate is very high. The same for Wikidata. Yeah. So must be careful, integrate this.
Right, okay, right. Yeah,
I use the modern language dictionaries, but sometimes it's really horrible. What people, it's common knowledge, but not specialist knowledge.
Right. I think by and large for the Celtic languages, well, for Proto-Celtic and Brythonic and Proto-Brythonic and things like that, I think it's fairly good.
I didn't check that. I checked French and German generally, and sometimes I don't agree. But there's so many people doing it.
Yeah. Sometimes Wiktionary isn't consistent with itself. That's a bit more of a problem. Maybe the English entry points to Proto-Germanic and they don't quite agree as to what the ultimate origin is. And then I have to decide for myself to some extent.
And I have the impression they didn't read the Saussure, so the difference between signifier, signifiant, so form and function, all goes up and down in both in Wikidata and in Wiktionary. Okay, thank you anyway.
I'll ask my question, and then I'll turn it over to Mike. You know, when the example you showed of Ku was really interesting because it highlighted something for me that I hadn't clicked in on before, which is that is a fairly straight line etymological family, right? You can go straight from Indo-European down to Gallic or Irish. But what I was curious about is what happens in a lot of cases, especially when you've got geographic closeness, is where you have widespread borrowing. And you don't have such a straightforward linear pathway.
It copes with borrowing fine. That's not a problem. What you can have is sort of pathological cases where you've got more and more suffixes, prefixes, and there's absolutely nothing of the original Indo-European root left, even though the tree provides the link. That doesn't happen. I haven't seen it often enough for it to be a problem, but it can happen.
Okay, thank you. I'll turn to Mike.
Hi, sorry, this is great. I think I actually answered my own question. I was just going to ask whether it's possible to access the data programmatically, like, you know, I want to write code to pull out, you know, things that look like this or that or the other. And then I saw on one of the pages, you'll let people request the thing in SQL format.
Yeah, I think if you go to the Bunadas website and then put /cloning, it's actually got an SQL dump from earlier this year.
Okay.
But if anybody wants a dump, it'd be a bit difficult to understand. And all the programs are in GitHub. It does need the smotter for the language thing, so you'd have to set up smotter to get the language interface and set up. But it's all publicly available.
Oh, excellent! Great, thank you. I did want to say one other thing. So we have a student who did an interesting project which might be of use to you. So what he was interested in was cognate relationships as a tool for revitalization. So his logic was, you've got a language and they don't have a word for telephone, or they don't have a word for, ox or whatever. And so you look at the related languages and you can reconstruct, right? So, but with the way he did it was with the neural net, right?
Yeah. Well, Bunadas is definitely useful for that, finding cognate words. If you're trying to compose words, then it's often better to use a cognate language. Something Glosby, semantically, the Glosby online dictionaries, nobody's very sure who's behind it. I think it's a bunch in Poland, but they must have some amazing semantic network there, and you can go from Breton to Arabic or anything.
Oh, wow.
And yeah.
Great, thank you.
One thing I forgot to say is sometimes I wonder whether I've just been in Indo-European, mostly even Western Indo-European, but would it be useful for a language like Japanese or Navajo? And I think it would. You wouldn't get these amazing, far too big trees, but there are, well, first of all, it can do relationships within languages, like Chaulach, the Gaelic word Chaulach family is Czech, is a house. Slua is people, servants. And the word Kogug, the Gaelic word Kogug, battle, it didn't dawn on me until recently. That's Ka is a battle, and Kogug rather is war. So it's Kogug is so relationship within languages are useful for learners as well. So even if you were doing Navajo. And the other thing is, even almost semi-isolates usually have some language like Okinawan or something that's a bit related to them. So I think it would be useful for even more non-major language groups like Indo-European.
Let's turn to Kevin. He has a couple of questions.
I just had some technical questions. One is whether you're periodically pulling data from Wikidata.
Just by hand.
Oh, it's by hand. Okay.
Yeah, everything's by hand. I'm afraid. I go to I've got basically all the Proto-Indo-European roots there, and I check whether any new ones have appeared, and if they look sufficiently reliable, I add them in. I do the same for the Proto-Celtic roots, and the Proto-Brittonic. No, Proto-Celtic lemmas, Proto-Brittonic lemmas. I'm started going through Old Irish, but I've only reached page 2 of 30 or something like that so far. So I am for the main roots, things like that. I'm going through them, but you couldn't possibly Wiktionary. As Johannes said, it's not totally reliable, but it's getting better by the week. The quality of the data, etymological data in Wiktionary, and you couldn't possibly keep up with it. In the long run, it does need something like Wikidata, lexical data, but it's not there yet.
I did mean to say Wiktionary in my question, because I know you're getting things, and I would imagine it's not very well structured either. I mean, it's semi-structured, but I don't think there's any rules that people have to follow.
It's quite dire, actually. The design decisions that they made 20 years ago to have all these different homonyms in the one page. You can have, if you get a 3 or 4 letter word that's pronounceable, you've got 40 languages that you have to scroll down to get to it, and I don't know how programs attempt to scrape things off of that, but it's not.
There is a project trying to get Wiki Dictionary into organized format. I forgot something DB. So it takes anything out of dictionary, passes it, because every language has its own wiki language around it, and they pass it and put it in a proper database. So it's at least easier to use, but it always lags behind a few months.
Right.
Dibinary, that's the word. Dibinary.
Say the name again.
Type it in this.
Okay, right, thanks.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I'll maybe talk to you again. That was something I heard about a couple of years ago, and I meant to look it up and follow it. Yeah.
I don't know whether it's still active, but the code is available, I think.
Right.
Could I ask one more question? I'm just curious where I'll skip my question about spanning trees and so on, but I'm curious where the people doing Wiktionary are getting the Proto-Celtic data, because I know there's is it Matasovich's dictionary? Is that sort of the main source, or is there?
I would guess that. They've got. I'm pretty sure they've got copies of the Leiden dictionaries, like Matasovich, legally or illegally, and they're going through all of that and adding the data. That's a sort of criticism of Wiktionary, is that that a lot of the data has come so much from the big Leiden dictionaries rather than going to hundreds of individual papers.
Sure. Cool, thank you.
Are there other questions? Anybody else? Dee has posted in the chat our 2 upcoming talks. Kevin Rotet is speaking on December 2nd, and Ryan Bennett and Jay Paget will be talking on December 9th, and that's the end of our talks for 2023. We have for 2022, we have a couple of talks not yet scheduled for spring 2023, and that will and then we'll decide whether we continue with the series or not. It's been an incredibly fruitful 3 years. So I'd like to invite you all to come to those talks. And Mike, do you remember what Kevin's talk is about? I know that Ryan and Jay's will be on phonology. We'll be on Irish phonology. So we'll probably ultrasound stuff is my guess. And Kevin's will probably be on Welsh, just guessing.
Or Breton.
Okay. Or Breton. Okay, yeah, I'm not actually sure what it is.
Actually, Breton is ringing a bell. I think that's what he wasn't. That sounds like something I remember him saying, but I don't know.
Okay, but come to them anyway, because we'd love to see you all there. So let's thank our speaker one more time for a really interesting and talk and remarkable work. And hope to see you all on December 2nd. Those of you who are in North America, have a happy Thanksgiving. And we'll talk to you all soon.
Thanks, great to see you.
Nak morons magra